Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, folks. I want to welcome all of you to Ohio Exopolitics. I'm your host, Mark Snyder. I'm working with the Blog Talk people. We're having some technical difficulties this evening. I'm not able to get Skype to start. They added a new feature to the studio, which didn't work, so I had to go back to Skype, and now Skype's not working. So I'm calling in by phone. If you notice the difference in the sound quality, it's probably because I am on the phone. We are talking about the Billy Meyer case this evening, particularly about Atlantis and Lemuria. And I'm also kind of trying to debug this difficulty with the support people, but I'd like to start the show. So let's go ahead and do that, and we'll see how it goes. I also want to do a little work on Atlantis and Lemuria now, because that's, as well as Goblet of Truth, and I want to relate these to together, but let me continue. I'm going to play a little music here and then log out with the technician here, and I'll be right back. Thanks, folks, for your understanding. Okay, let's try this one more time. Again, please accept my apologies for the technical difficulties on this end. I wanted to back up in the Goblet of Truth. We got to the point where the Goblet of Truth was talking about a third global conflagration, which is imminent. And I defined a clash as a violent confrontation. And the industrial nations are the countries where economic activity is concerned with the processing of raw materials and the manufacture of goods in factories. The third world nations are the underdeveloped nations of the world, especially those with widespread poverty. A conflagration is a term that can mean a large, very destructive fire. A term that can also mean a war or a conflict. So the Goblet of Truth, again, is telling us this. Things have already reached the stage when a clash of industrial nations could occur, something which can scarcely be stopped any longer, and will also cast the nations of the third world into the same darkness. And if this happens, a third global conflagration will be imminent in whatever form it takes. Indeed, the human beings of Earth are well on their way to this. Therefore, it is only a question of time and rationality as and when and whether it will actually occur. However, it is once again the case that the signs are pointing to the whole thing being unavoidable. However, this third world conflagration may take various forms, such as a collapse of nature that has been desecrated and flouted by the human beings of Earth, as have the atmosphere, the water, the planet as a whole, and the animal kingdom. To put it simply, a global catastrophe. And this collapse would result in the collapse of civilization, leading in the final analysis to the total extermination of the human beings of Earth, or at least a regression to the harshest forms of primitive living. Let me again define some of our terms here. The word collapse means to break down, to come to nothing, to fail. Nature refers to the elements of the natural world, as mountains, trees, animals, or rivers. In this passage, nature has said to have been desecrated. Desecration can mean to treat with sacrilege, to profane. Some of the synonyms for desecrate mean to defile, to violate, to dishonor, to pollute, to outrage. Flouted means to treat with disdain, scorn, or contempt, scoff, and mock. So we have done horrible things to nature, is what this passage is trying to tell us. And it talks about civilization here and what could happen to civilization because of this. Civilization is an advanced state of human society in which a high level of culture, science, industry, and government has been reached. This passage talks about the extermination of humanity on Earth. Exterminate means to get rid of by destroying totally. The synonyms for exterminate mean to eradicate, to abolish, to annihilate, to eliminate. So because of our maltreatment of nature, what will happen is a collapse of civilization and the potential for exterminating all of humanity. Regression means the act of going back to a previous place or state, to return, or a reversion. Okay, let's pick back up in the Goblet of Truth here. Falling back into a total primitive anarchy is also possible, meaning that all of the life forms still existing would only be capable of a vegetative existence full of suffering. Viewing the whole thing from this threatening perspective means no more and no less than that the human beings of Earth will sacrifice all of their valuable achievements through a global catastrophe, and all because they had followed a flawed development for millennia in terms of true love, freedom, harmony, and real peace amongst all life forms. Okay, this previous passage warns us about falling back into anarchy. Anarchy is a state of a society without government or law. That is not a good thing, folks. We may fall back into a vegetative existence, which means vegetative denotes or pertains to bodily functions that are performed unconsciously or involuntarily. So perhaps we would be almost unconscious, or we would be like zombies when this third global conflagration occurs. So we could be talking about the collapse of nature, the collapse of society, a third world war, and conflagration literally means fire. So there could be some world fire associated with this. Again, back to the Goblet of Truth. Indeed, in the present day, it is possible to see an apocalypse of this kind looming threateningly on the horizon and over the destiny of human beings on Earth, because even long ago, the blossoming culture of the truth was destroyed globally, and evil Gewalt and every kind of Asartung set in its place, a thing that has happened in particular due to the machinations of politicians, false laws, false penal codes, as well as religions and sects. Now, apocalypse is the word used here, one of the words. Apocalypse can mean two things. It can mean, one, any universal or widespread destruction or disaster. Two, it can also mean any class of Jewish or Christian writings that appeared from about 200 BC to an AD of about 350, and were assumed to make revelations of the ultimate divine purpose. Another term found in that passage is the German word Gewalt, and there's really no adequate word in the English to explain Gewalt. Gewalt is a force, a might above all might and force. The other word used in that passage is Asartung, which means to get very bad, out of control of the good nature. And it warns in that passage about the machinations, the crafty schemes, the plots, the intrigues of the politicians. Boy, we've seen a lot of that today. Okay, this next passage in the Goblet of Truth warns us about the Roman Catholic Church. In the Christian world, the blame for this undoubtedly lies fairly and squarely at the door of the Roman Catholic Church. Christianity, as a monotheistic and strictly autocratically oriented religion, is guilty of developing completely new, evil and ascarted directions of thought and forms of state after the fall of the despotic Roman Empire, which spread all over the earth and under which all human beings are suffering in the new times. So we're still suffering from the Roman Empire, which is amazing. The Roman Catholic Church is the Christian church over which the Pope resides. It has an administrative headquarters in the Vatican. It's called the Catholic Church, the Church of Rome. It's the branch of Christianity headed by the Pope. The Roman Catholic Church is governed by a hierarchy with the Pope at the top and at the lower levels, bishops and priests. The sacraments of communion and confession are especially important in the Roman Catholic Church. Catholics also differ from most Protestants in emphasizing the veneration of saints, especially Mary, the mother of Jesus, seeking the intercession of saints, praying to them so they will in turn pray to God. So what is the Goblet of Truth telling us here? It's telling us that our society is an aberration. And an aberration is something that has gone down the wrong path of evolution. It's in a state where it will probably destroy itself and not survive. Now, this is the same kind of thing that happened, but in a different way, during the time of Atlantis. We've had two societies that collapsed. 150,000 years ago, an extraterrestrial man named Pelagon, a king of wisdom, came to the earth. He fled from the Pleiadian system with, I think, 200 leaders and sub-leaders and a whole thousands of people, came here to the earth, developed a society that spread across all of the continents of earth, rose to a very high level. Pelagon was benevolent. He was a king of wisdom, an Ishwish, a god with lowercase g. He was said to be seen sometimes hovering above the earth with the power of his mind. He was said to cause plants to grow with the power of his mind. His spirit, the power of his human spirit, allowed him to live for about 2,000 years. When he died, the man that took over for him was not nearly as successful. The society descended into chaos, had a horrific global war that covered all of the continents of the earth, and some of these extraterrestrials, the ones that didn't die, fled to the star system called Beta Centauri. But this is a Beta Centauri in a different space-time configuration. Beta Centauri in our dimension, in our space-time configuration, is a trinary star system about 350 light years away. It has two very large stars that have exhausted all their hydrogen and one smaller star. And these extraterrestrials headed back to Beta Centauri to escape the disaster that occurred during Atlantis and Lemuria. Eventually, they came back to the Earth. This was about 133,000 years ago. They were led by a man named Atlant, who was a man of obvious Lyran descent. He had broad shoulders, pasty white skin. He was the king of wisdom. He was living at the 5th level of human evolution. He came here with his wife, Kariatide, who was the female version of an Ishwish. Her cousin, Miraz, also came eventually. The Atlanteans settled on an island continent between South America and Africa. It was also between North America and Europe. It was a large island continent. They had visited it before. In fact, in Contact Report 70, it says, in the latest episode, under the leadership of Atlant, the continent of Atlantis, which had been headed for again and again and used for millennia, was expanded and made habitable. So they had headed here again and again, or someone had, and the people, the final group here, expanded it and actually made it habitable. Miraz built the gigantic city of Mu. Mu was located in the area of the Gobi Desert. The Gobi Desert is about 1,000 miles long. It's near Mongolia in northwestern China. It's a large desert region, about 1,000 miles long. I don't think it was a desert back then. And the reason they constructed these cities so far apart was that they had learned this was a good way to avoid war, and it allowed them to have peace for about 1,800 years. However, scientists came here, scientists that were working under power lust, which I think sometimes motivates scientists, unfortunately. We're seeing this kind of power lust today in transhumanism. And I'd like to play a clip here that you probably heard before, but it talks about transhumanism. And I wonder if the same kind of scientific dictatorship that's being set up today was being set up in ancient times. Remember what they're going to do? They're going to take away your right to travel. We'll have Google cars very soon. Google cars will drive themselves. They'll try to implant chips into your brain. There's a brain implant already developed. You're welcome to get one. I don't recommend it. It will certainly take some kind of control. This is all the plan of these transhumanists to merge with machines. Remember, the founder of Sun Microsystems, Bill Joy, warned that they were going to try to merge us with machines and that humans might become obsolete. Let's listen to our clip here. It's going to tell us about becoming gods. Some of these transhumanists really think they're going to become gods, and it's quite ironic.
You know, when I became president in January of 1993, back in the dark ages, the average cell phone weighed 5 pounds. And there were 50 sites on the entire World Wide Web. 50. There have been more added than that since I've been talking.
God made man in his own image. God intended for man to become one with God. We are going to become one with God. Cloning and the reprogramming of DNA is the first serious step in becoming one with God.
This issue is going to dominate.
So in the time of Atlantis and Lemuria, then, however, again, some scientists exalted themselves, whipped up by power lust. they tried to snatch control for themselves. This time, however, they had not reckoned with the people's memory of war, which had been passed down the ages. So before the scientists could strike, the people rose up against them. Through an accomplice, the scientists obtained possession of spaceships and fled back to the space-time shifted regions of Beta Centauri.
And flipping back and forth in femtoseconds. There's more computing capacity in that grain of sand than our human brains by a factor of, I don't know, billions. So these machines, if we, humanity, if we decide to build them, we're building God.
We humans are going to start linking with each other and become this meta-intelligence. And we will eventually become an interconnection of the entire human race. And we will become godlike.
So the transhumanists think they'll become godlike. I think the same kind of arrogance happened many thousands of years ago, in fact, 115,000 years ago. These scientists that fled back to Beta Centauri again, they were filled with hate. Now, I can't quite, in my own mind, imagine this. This whole group of scientists, 2,000 years, they're in another planet, another solar system, and they produce many descendants. They create a high technical standard. They even expand their own lifespan. Instead of going on with their life, their hate leads them back to attack the people of Earth. It says here in Contact 70, spurned on through their inhuman hate, they, through research and knowledge obtained from it, drove up their life expectancy to more than 1,000 years. Their single wish, however, was to gain control over the Earth, for which reason every individual was taught wicked intrigues and instructed in the craft of war. And after 2,000 years, this hate-drenched people was so far along that it could venture an attack on the Earth. Therefore, it manned its ships and came newly to the Earth, indeed under the leadership of the Ishwish, Eris the barbarian. This happened 113,000 years ago. Now, Ishwish, again, means king of wisdom. Eris was a not-so-benevolent Ishwish. Every once in a while, one of these kings of wisdom would be kind of unbalanced in his development. Eris came back, and he had 200 high-grade scientists with him, and they attacked, murdering, take possession of the land. He attacked Hyperborea. Now, Hyperborea was in the area of the poles. It was a beautiful area. The climate was fantastic during that time, and it was a wonderful place to be. Eris attacked that area. He took it over. Now, his son, Eris II, went into India and attacked the area of India, attacked the area of Pakistan and Persia, and took all of those places over. Now, Eris' son struck the earliest forefathers of the Sumerians, who were peace-loving and fled and settled far down in the south. They just got out of there. They were dark-skinned like Europe, very dark-skinned. They weren't black. They were more like Europeans. They had tall growth, and they were descended from a former race of Syrian refugees who had settled the earth 133,000 years ago. So anyway, we have the area of Hyperborea taken over, the area of India, the area of Pakistan. And the war machinations continued for some 502 years. Eventually, Eris the barbarian, he became kind of old and weak, but he had released enough spies to go into Atlantis, enough spies to go into Lemuria, and they created this great dissension, which eventually led to the Great War that I've described before. And it was really truly a a shocking war that led to a pole shift and led to people going back to this vegetative existence. Remember me reading in the Goblet of Truth about the potential of our society going back to a vegetative existence? Remember, it talks about the potential collapse of our society. Well, it's happened in the past. Little different circumstances in the time of Atlantis and Lemuria. So, what are the solutions to this horrific state that we're in? And when I think of some of the solutions, I have to go back to Billy's first contacts. In fact, young Edward Albert Meyer, Billy Edward Albert Meyer, grew up in Bulak, Switzerland, a little town called Niederflachs. And back when he was 5 years old, he would get these telepathic messages to go out into the Oregon forest and wait for his extraterrestrial mentor, Svath, who was a Plejaren man of about 1,000 years old. Now remember, the Plejaren allowed themselves to be called the Pleiadians for many years. They're not from our Pleiades. They're from a different space-time configuration, some 80 light years beyond our Pleiades. So not only is there 100,000, it would take 100,000 years traveling at the speed of light to get across our galaxy. Not only that, is our galaxy contains different space-time configurations, different dimensions, if you will. I wonder if these different space-time configurations, if they're like similar, if they're almost, they mirror each other in certain ways. I know there's a Cirrus system in a different space-time configuration. There's a Lyrian system in a different space-time configuration. So the Plejaren live in a very highly advanced state in this other space-time configuration. Svath came here to be Edward's teacher, Billy's teacher, for the first 11 years of his life. You see, Edward Albert Meyer is a very, very ancient spirit form. He's been on the earth. His spirit form has been reincarnating on the earth for about 13,000 years, according to the Meyer material. He's been Enoch, Elijah, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Emmanuel, and Muhammad. And each time he incarnated on earth, he taught the teaching of the Spirit. However, that same spirit form has incarnated in the ancient past, the first time 9.6 thousand million years ago, as Nocodamian, who's sometimes called the unblemished precious one. He also incarnated about 8,000 million years ago as Henoch. The Nocodamian spirit form first incarnated on Earth 389,000 years ago as Semyasa, when he sired Adam, the first Adam. There were actually two Adams. Nocodamian then incarnated during the time of Atlantis and Lemuria. And he fathered again another Adam about 11,000 years ago. Now the first Henoch, again, this is the Nocodamian spirit form, incarnated at about 13,500 years ago, and then again at about 9,300 BC. And then again as Elijah, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Emmanuel, and Muhammad, and finally as Edward Albert Meyer. So this spirit form is very, very ancient indeed, and has incarnated as these different personalities on Earth to reintroduce, particularly in our time, because in our time we have the technology to store this information as it was given. What has happened in our ancient past, according to Maya material, each time this information was given, religions came in, distorted it horribly, and the true teaching was lost. So in this time, it will be recorded in its original form. So what is the teaching of the Spirit? The intention of the spiritual teaching is to awaken the human race out of their sleep. So evidently we're in some kind of sleep. The teaching of this creational truth will become a worldwide movement that will bring peace, love, and freedom to the human beings of this world. Now, not only has Edward Albert Meyer had contact with these extraterrestrial humans, he also receives information from a spiritual plane called Arahat Athrasata. And the reason Billy can do this is because Billy was taught something called spiritual telepathy from Svath. And Billy has come to clarify to all human beings the teaching of the truth, which will lead to the raising of the entire humanity on Earth. So this is the solution to the aberration that has occurred in our society, the aberration that occurred during the time of Pelagon, and the aberration that occurred during the time of Atlantis and Lemuria. And this is what Svath said about Billy. He said, and what your desire is, what you want to bring the human beings, is unity, peace, conquered knowledge, wisdom, love, freedom, and harmony, and more profound truth and cognizant that in the entire creational realm, in the entire universe, everything is one and bound together. However, this oneness and connectedness with all and everything is the result of the might and the immeasurable love of creation, which gives everything selflessly and demands no payment for it. The biggest problem of the human being is their ignorance concerning the creation and its laws and recommendations. So what is the creation? Billy's third extraterrestrial teacher, Semyasi, a woman who was the granddaughter of Svath, appeared to Billy in 1975. She would land her ship there in Switzerland in the beginning and literally meet Billy face to face out in the open during the daylight. Of course, that didn't last too long. As more and more people learned about the contacts, they had to make the contacts more and more remote, and eventually Billy had to be taken up into the ship. And that's the time in the 70s when most all the photographs were taken, the 1,200 or so photographs of the beam ships. I recommend you go to the Future Mankind site if you haven't seen those incredible photographs before. Not only do they have the photographs, but they have film of the beam ships, 30 minutes of film, color film, and well over 100 other eyewitnesses. So this is not fantasy. This is reality. Colonel Wendell Stevens went over there with an investigation team, and he was convinced that Edward Albert Meyer was having these contacts. Anyway, what is the creation? That's one of the first things that Semyase taught him. She said that love and wisdom go together, and that the creation and its laws are love and wisdom at the same time. I was reading that passage that talked about the radiating love of creation. Billy writes another book on love years later as an adult that says, the incredible splendor of nature is the visible expression of the love of creation, and that creation radiates love, so that at every point and every place we can experience the radiating love of creation. And that love is the highest principle in creation, and everything follows that principle. Everything follows that principle in absolute logic. Now, the creational universal consciousness is a natural production of its own evolution, just like the human being and all other living creatures, as well as the entire universe. So we are responsible for our own evolution. And everything existing in it corresponds to the causal forms of evolution given by the creational natural laws. So the purpose of our life is evolution. In fact, the real you is your spirit form. And one of the main principles of the spiritual teachings is the reincarnation of the human spirit form. Your spirit form is a tiny thing about the size of the point of a needle. It radiates a kind of energy that goes throughout your body, and it goes throughout the body like a web. It's located in your midbrain in an area called the superior colliculus. The superior colliculus is associated with eye movement, with the change of your gaze. It's associated with temperature regulation. It's also associated with your other senses to a degree. But your human spirit is created by creation to help creation with its own evolution. So when you die, your spirit form leaves your body, and it enters into the fine material world, the spiritual realm, and it prepares for its next physical incarnation. Now your body dissolves, your personality dissolves, your material consciousness dissolves. The universal consciousness takes your past life memories and stores them in the storage banks. Now when you're supposed to reincarnate again, your human spirit is placed back into the body of a child, into the superior colliculus again, into the midbrain, and that child starts its consciousness-based evolution. The comprehensive consciousness block comes down and creates a new material consciousness. You're given a new personality, and the wisdom of your predecessor personalities is placed in your subconscious. And when you grow back up in the next lifetime, you'll get inspiration from your subconscious, and you'll get impulses from the storage banks. And that way, wisdom builds on top of wisdom. Now, the creation is universal self-awareness. It is the source of life for everything in the universe. Now, the universe itself evolves, and our universe, which was created 46 trillion years ago in an archetypal Big Bang, is the most primitive universe because it still has a material belt. Now, the material belt is the fourth layer. There are 7 concentric rings in our universe. If you could cut a tree down, you'll see concentric rings. Well, our universe is like that. It's egg-shaped. It has 7 layers that counter-rotate against one another. In the fourth belt, the material belt, are all the stars, the planets, the galaxies, all the material in the entire universe. Now, material only lasts about 45 billion years, and then new energy comes from the transformation belt and is formed into matter in the material belt. So we have this flow into the material and back into the spiritual, just like we do have reincarnation, just like we have awake time and a sleep time, just like we have the winter and the spring. Now, your personality, your consciousness gets dissolved into fine spiritual energy when you die, and it goes into the overall consciousness block. The overall consciousness block records all your past lives' knowledge and wisdom, which you have learned. Each time you die in a material body, the overall consciousness block absorbs your consciousness, which contains your knowledge and your wisdom from the material life that you just had. Now, one of my favorite writings that Billy has is called Love Teaching Letter number 27. And on page 296, it says, the love of creation is everywhere, because without it, nothing at all would be able to exist. The individual should therefore be aware that he exists only through the love of creation, and that he carries this love also within himself. All of nature in its indescribable splendor is nothing but the love of creation, which is expressed visibly. Its laws are so wonderfully arranged that people everywhere come up against its radiating love, and love will continuously be the purpose of existence, all timely in its given logic. So we should have a great respect for nature. We should have a veneration for nature. Remember, veneration is a respect, but it's also more than just respect. It's an appreciation of the age of something, of the impressive dignity of something. So let me play a wonderful clip that talks about the rainforest. One of my favorite clips that I do like to listen to. It's called Beneath the Canopy.
The heart of the rainforest. Here we can discover the secrets of a world 100 million years old. The forest has survived from prehistoric times, outlasting the dinosaurs. Huge trees stand like monuments amidst the symphony of life. Shrouded in a translucent veil, millions of living organisms compete for light beneath the canopy. Layer upon layer, life here exists in harmony. Trees in the rainforest have been known to live as long as 350 years and grow to nearly 200 feet tall. Throughout the forest, trees seek sunlight. Its energy allows them to process the nutrients they need to survive. A soft carpet of moss covers these ancient Arctic beech trees as they reach ever skyward in search of the light. Water, the great sustainer of life in the rainforest. These rivers and streams are the veins and arteries of the rainforest ecosystem. The rainforest canopy shields its vulnerable inhabitants from the harsh surrounding elements. It also serves as a home. High up in the trees, we can find birds living among the branches of the canopy. In some areas of the rainforest, the moisture in the air forms a fine blanket of mist. The mist filters the sunlight into a soft haze. Elsewhere, beams of sunlight cut through the forest, creating dramatic glowing rays. Looking high into the canopy, countless trees can be seen competing for their place in the forest. Further below, however, other forms of life are involved in their own struggle. The forest teems with insect life. Nature's tiny soldiers. They are inhabitants of almost any location on Earth and flourish in the lush and fertile world of the forest floor. Imagine for a moment the enormity of the world as these creatures see it. Every stick and leaf would compare to the size of a building or a freeway. Their day is busy with exploration and foraging for food. Ants follow the trails of other ants. With complex and subtle chemical communication, ants can talk perfectly to one another. Many creatures travel the same pathways. For this caterpillar, it's a lonely solo journey. Different insects have their own ways of getting from place to place. Rainforest creatures have an amazing variety of special abilities. Many insects are masters of disguise. This creature resembles a piece of bark and moves slowly, almost invisible to potential predators. For some animals, blending in is not high on the list of priorities. This beetle's metallic shell reflects the light, a warning to birds and other predators that there are better options on the lunch menu. For tiny insects, every detail of the environment is an enormous landscape. Although small, They play a large part in the life of the rainforest.
Wonderful clip there called Rainforest Beneath the Canopy. Played parts of that one before. I didn't get to the Shroud of Turin this evening. I'll try to fire back up maybe tomorrow morning with another show on the Meyer material. Hope you've enjoyed the show this evening. Sorry about a little bit of technical problems in the beginning there. We're working through some things on the Blog Talk side. I will be on Revolution Radio, and we will be talking to Frosty Wooldridge on population, and I think my co-host Keith is going to take the second hour, and he'll be talking to Robert David Steele. Hope you've enjoyed the show this evening. I've enjoyed giving it to you. You're listening to Ohio Exopolitics. I'm your host, Mark Snyder. Have a good evening. We will talk to you later.